Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
President Trump ramping up the attacks on his own attorney general, as we said, and one former White House official is not happy about it. We'll get to that in a second. This is a new interview with The Hill TV. Trump again berated Jeff Sessions over his decision to recuse himself from the Russia investigation. This time he went further, saying, quote, "I don't have an attorney general. It's very sad. I'm not happy at the border. I'm not happy with numerous things. Not just this. I'm so sad over Jeff Sessions because he came to me. He was the first senator that endorsed me, and he wanted to be attorney general, and I didn't see it." Phil Rucker and Ashley Parker of the Washington Post spoke to a former White House official about the president's latest attack on Sessions, who said this, quote, "It is a complete disgrace the way that Trump is acting like a schoolyard bully against Sessions," the official said, requesting anonymity to share a critical opinion. "I understand his frustration. I understand why he feels the way he does. But what a child. What an absolute baby. He's disgracing himself." Earlier today, the president was asked about his comment that he didn't have an attorney general.
I'm disappointed in the attorney general for numerous reasons, but we have an attorney general. I'm disappointed in the attorney general for many reasons, and you understand.
Are you going to fire him? Are you going to fire Jeff Sessions?
We are looking at lots of different things. I have a great cabinet. We have the greatest economy ever in the history of our country. So we're very happy with the way things are running, generally speaking.
With us tonight, David Jolly, former Republican congressman from Florida, beaming with pride, and Frank Montoya, former FBI special agent in charge, who during his time with the Bureau played a role in establishing the National Cyber Investigative Joint Task Force. All right, Congressman, you can guess this. I'm coming to you. Is it an article of faith that the day after the midterms, Jeff Sessions is Xeroxing resumes?
And the question is, does he get fired or resign first? Look, Donald Trump's continued comments about Jeff Sessions simply reinforce that when it comes to true leadership, Donald Trump is a weak and timid man. He is unable to confront Jeff Sessions face to face on this. He is unable to make the hard decision. Instead, he just continues to lampoon and deride Sessions in the press. But I think we do have to wrestle with the question. Of course, Donald Trump would be happy to fire Sessions immediately after the election. Lindsey Graham has telegraphed that. But does Jeff Sessions beat him to the punch? And what does that political story look like? Jeff Sessions has served the public for 35 years as a U.S. attorney, as Attorney General of the state of Alabama, as a United States Senator. He has a healthy impression of himself, as most senators do, if you will. And does he want to go out being fired by a tweet, as Rex Tillerson was, or does he actually want to go out on his own terms? I think it actually might be the latter, and we should begin to consider what that story looks like.
Hey, Frank, how are feds doing their jobs these days when the president says he doesn't have an attorney general, and this week, in the last 24 hours, called the FBI a cancer on the country?
It's difficult. first and foremost, they're professionals, and so they're going to put their heads down. They're going to keep doing the work. But the fact of the matter is, everybody's paying attention to this. Their partners, their sources, the folks that they're running investigations against. And so there is a vulnerability, and it's also a huge challenge in terms of the trust that you try to build with the folks that you're working with, and the sources that you're trying to develop. And so, yeah, it's really hard. It's difficult. It's a slap in the face, and the fact is that it keeps on going. It doesn't end, and people are starting to struggle with it.
David, do you see any Republican standing up to this?
No, not at all. I think the question for Republicans is what happens with a replacement nomination. But to your point, Jeff Sessions is one Republican right now actually standing up for himself and for the country, and in many ways has become a quiet hero regardless of what you think of his ideology. He is advancing a very strongly conservative Donald Trump criminal justice agenda. He is rolling back Barack Obama's criminal justice agenda. Many people disagree with that. But at the end of the day, it is hard to point to another cabinet member that has been resolute in his quiet defiance of this president. I don't think anybody saw that coming with Jeff Sessions, but the reality is Jeff Sessions has continued to stand up to this president, done so in under his own terms, but at least he's due credit for doing so.
Yeah, good point. Hey, Frank, is there anything in what we've just been talking about, what we've witnessed, say just this week, that a Mueller would be interested in while he does his work?
All of it. I mean, I think that he's probably got somebody on staff just responsible for writing down every one of these utterances. It was interesting today that two things about the commentary. One, it seemed to confirm everything that Bob Woodward was talking about in his book. But the other part of that, too, is that he seemed to be laying the groundwork for, in the instance of a dismissal, that maybe, he can't be cornered on this one in terms of an obstruction of justice issue. The point, that point notwithstanding, the fact remains that he has said so many things about Jeff Sessions, about the Russia investigation, that point to potential obstruction of justice. That, like I said, somebody's keeping notes on every single one of these utterances, and it's just another piece or another straw on the camel's back. If I can make one more point, just in terms of what the congressman said, I think that regardless of what your political ideology might be, the fact that Sessions has continued to stay the course, even seen himself, I think, as part of the thin blue line that separates us from chaos, is something noteworthy. And he may leave or wants to leave on his own terms, but I think that at least at this point in time, if he can stay, the longer the better.
It is Friday, the 21st of September of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, folks, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Yes, yes, yes. Well, we've got the French 77s already chilled and ready to go, so you say the word, and we'll pour you virtually, because that's how we do it. We can do anything we want in the virtual world. Just say it, and it is true. Right? Ed Whalen. Yeah, he's a Whalen. A Whalen that he's getting sued to where he won't have any money if he had any to begin with. What? I don't know. I guess he's not going to get that job with the New York Times. Or maybe he still will. Just for balance, maybe. They'll do that. The great lady will. Well, Ed Whalen apparently deleted his tweets about this Rube Goldberg conspiracy theory that proved that someone other than Kavanaugh committed this dastardly deed that Dr. Ford has accused Kavanaugh of. And he actually named a person. Yikes. That's why I'm saying Ed Whelan's getting sued. Maybe the National Review too. And I hope that, well, National Review online. But still, I hope maybe they have no more funds left and they go the way of like Metzger and his white supremacist KKK outfit. Yeah, I hope so. And apparently it wasn't Ed Whalen who deleted those tweets, but someone who looked like him. Yeah. Okay, well, they can't win by following the rules, and so they just break every single rule there is. How desperate are they to pack the courts? This desperate, apparently. And it's right out in the open, and according to the polls, nobody likes Kavanaugh except a few people in the Federalist Society, and they are the only ones that count in this political dynamic. Well, starting off in the top there, we had the 11th Hours panel speaking about Trump disgracing himself with his spurious and scurrilous and constant attacks on Jeff Sessions. And I actually have no iota of sympathy for Jeff Sessions. He deserves everything he gets. But people say it's good that, as they finished up in the clip up top, that it's good that Sessions stays there for now and for every day that he stays there. Of course, this is the same guy who wants to, lock up babies in baby gulags. And he is. And we actually start off in the Bistro Cafe with some more stories that go right along that line of what Jeff Sessions, his departments are doing. They're ghouls, they're Nazis, they're SA Gestapo. What else is happening in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, ICE is arresting the sponsors of undocumented children. The sponsors. And in many cases, U.S. citizens who are family. I guess they don't want anyone to come here at all. And then the ones that are here, they're going to get rid of, and they are. The NRA is losing millions of dollars as it drives away supporters. Well, you would think, all that Cold War propaganda still kind of. It does. I think it still permeates our very existence and identity as Americans. Come on. And the depths of one of Europe's largest money laundering scandals has been exposed. After the break, we then move to the chef's table where, aided by Republicans in the Senate, Trump is steadily chipping away at liberal U.S. appeals court majorities. And the Russian anti-doping program has been reinstated, despite failing to meet key guidelines. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Go to our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice a lovely homepage. Oh, thank you, Tom. Yes, we do have a seasonal homepage, and it changes out as the seasons change, and right now it is voting season. Okay, we're about ready to get hot and heavy into voting season, and there is some scrolling on our homepage in which, if you follow the scroll link, you will be taken to a place that will determine if you are registered to vote. Because you never know when they're going to kick you off the rolls. They can't win without cheating. So we have to stay, a step ahead or two. And there are also links in which you can register to vote. So please check those out, or direct a family member, friend, or acquaintance, and make sure they're registered to vote, and do. All right. Scrolling to the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice the chat room link at the rightish of the page, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Check out both of her shows. At the Table is on Saturday at 3 p.m. on the West Coast, 6 p.m. on the East Coast. At the Table with Kelly Lincoln. Check that out. And then later on, she teams up with Ricky and for the Roundtable Roundhouse Power Hour. And that's at 9 p.m. on the West Coast, midnight on the East Coast. If you take a gander to the leftish of the page from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice a very key component of this whole operation called Netroots Radio, and that is the Contribute button. Yes, indeed, because we are unable to do this without you, and would you please become a Patreon? Even $1 helps. $1 a month, if you can afford that, that would be great. Buy us a coffee, just once a month. Can you afford that? Or how about, can you afford maybe a latte and a croissant? Maybe you could afford that for us once a month. That's all we are requesting, and I'm not kidding. We need it. So thank you for your generosity, and Resistance Radio keeps on resisting because of your generosity. Thank you. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Follow us on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. And I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime. So check me out there. I'm there as Justice Putnam. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. We are on Facebook, and you can also pick up podcasts of this show, West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, by way of Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn, iTunes, YouTube, and wherever fine podcasts and not so fine podcasts can be found. All right. Well, this first article is another maddening revelation and reportage. Rebecca Entralgo of Think Progress brings us this first offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Trump administration is using the process of placing undocumented immigrant children with sponsors as a way to track down and arrest undocumented individuals. From early July through early September, ICE detained 41 undocumented immigrants who came forward to take care of undocumented children in government custody, and the agency is reportedly planning to go after more. Well, they're here illegally. I mean, geez, what can be more illegal than a job? Children who arrive in the U.S. unaccompanied are often placed with family or members or in the homes of adults who applied to care for the children as they fight to legally stay in the country. That means some of the sponsors arrested over the last few months could have been relatives of the children. And I don't want to simplify it by saying, it's just the jobs. Many of these people have been fleeing devastation, pestilence, death at the hands of their fellows. They needed to get away from there. They needed to get their kids away from there. Who wouldn't? But apparently in this country, that's illegal if you're brown. Without their sponsors, undocumented immigrant children fall back into federal custody, maintaining the cycle of indefinite detention. Wow. Okay. This news was initially made public on Tuesday when ICE senior official Matthew Albence testified that the Department of Health and Human Services and ICE signed a memorandum of agreement to fingerprint and perform background checks on any potential sponsor of immigrant children. Just not entitled white frat boys. Don't do any background checks on them. Okay, I mean, we might find something, a youthful indiscretion. We don't want to find out about that. But babies, we want to make sure we lock them up forever. ICE confirmed that the arrests occurred after the agreement was signed and that 70% of the arrests were because the agency discovered the individual was in the country illegally. What does that mean anymore now? The move to put potential sponsors through a harsher vetting process was in response to concerns over whether unaccompanied minors were being placed in potentially dangerous situations and HHS's inability to account for the whereabouts of hundreds of missing children. I think they mean thousands. Thousands of missing children. Oh, yeah, and then we hear about these Border Patrol serial killers killing women. Oh, yeah, they said they were sex workers, so it didn't really matter. And then we hear about, what was it, a Pennsylvania cop or a New Jersey cop? I'm sorry for casting aspersions on the wrong department and state. But some police sergeant and captain got arrested for running a child sex ring. Where are the girls? Just as Think Progress reported back in April when the Where Are the Children hashtag went viral. These children were never really missing at all in reality. Once undocumented children are placed with sponsors, which is a family member, 85% of the time they are no longer Health and Human Services responsibility. The agency's only obligation is to conduct a cursory wellness call to the child sponsor. Well, just send ICE instead and arrest the whole lot of them. Get them out of the country. We don't want them here. We only want things that are made with Aryan hands. Eric Bullard of Share Blue Media brings us this next offering here at West Coast Cookbook's Bistro Cafe. Well, it looks like the NRA broke the bank helping the GOP in 2016. Now it might not be able to recover. I guess all those Russian rubles have dried up. It's a little bit harder to convert them into dollars now, apparently. Well, the NRA is losing membership fees, and it's running up huge deficits as a result. These grim findings, based on an audit by Open Secrets, raises doubts about the long-term prospects of the radical gun lobbying group. The document offers a first look at the NRA's finances in the wake of the 2016 elections. It shows that for the last 2 years, the NRA saw plummeting income from dues-paying members, and that has in turn fueled growing deficits. Specifically, the NRA ran up a $14 million deficit in 2016, which then ballooned to $31 million in 2017. That is a stunning reversal from 2015, when the NRA posted $27 million in positive assets. The NRA's woes are partly fueled by its shrinking membership. Revenue from dues fell from $163 million in 2016 to $128 million last year. Membership dues also dipped in 2016 compared to 2015, marking the first time in nearly a decade that the group suffered back-to-back years of declines. You know what they should do is say that a black president is going to take their guns away, and the only way to stop that is having an NRA membership drive. Or maybe it's too late for that. For years, the NRA has boasted that it has 5 million members, but that claim has never been independently verified. The NRA also broke the bank in 2016 on behalf of the GOP, spending $54 million to boost Republican candidates. Of that, $32 million went to help Trump win the White House. But we have a suspicion where at least that $32 million came from. A strong suspicion, I might add. The NRA's massive 2016 push was part of what ultimately became a $100 million spike in the group's outlays between 2015 and 2016, according to Open Secrets. Now, however, the coffers are depleted. This summer, the NRA warned that it might have to shut down its media outlets, which include NRA TV. Darn. They have to shut that down? You mean Dana Loesch might have to go somewhere else? Darn. The controversial group has also become entangled in even more controversy than usual, thanks to allegations that it acted as a front group for Russian operatives during the 2016 campaign. Thanks to its newly shaky finances, the NRA also has had to drastically cut back on its political spending in this year's midterm election. Well, just ask Vlad for another loan. Or do you know what happens when you don't pay on time? Michelle of Think Progress brings us this last offering here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy's Bistro Cafe, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Well, here, while we go over this, you better have a French 77 to, dull the edge a little bit. This will certainly make you, upset. For years, the Estonian branch of the Denmark-based Danske Bank ignored repeated warnings about specific clients and the source of their money. The warnings came from regulators and government officials alike, even from the Russian central bank. Now, more than a decade later, we are just beginning to understand the total cost of the bank's unwillingness to heed any concern about its clients and the source of the billions the bank was helping launder. This week, Danske Bank, Denmark's biggest lender, released the findings of an investigation into the Estonian branch's work from 2007 to 2015. The conclusions were staggering. The bank revealed that it had handled over $230 billion in that time period, a significant percentage of which was suspicious, representing, as the Financial Times noted, one of the largest money laundering scandals ever uncovered. All told, the bank investigated some 15,000 non-resident clients and nearly 10 million payments, as well as over 8 million emails. Focusing on over 6,000 of the non-resident clients in particular, the vast majority have been found to be suspicious, according to the investigation. Perhaps the most damning aspect of the entire investigation: the bank still has no idea exactly how many clients poured tens of billions of dollars through the bank in order to clean the cash. As the bank wrote, "We are not able to provide an accurate estimate of the amount of suspicious transactions." Heads have already begun to roll. On Wednesday, Danske Bank CEO Thomas Borgen announced his resignation. Even though the investigation conducted by the external law firm concludes that I have lived up to my legal obligations, I believe that it is best for all parties that I resign, Borgen said. And not a moment too soon. The bank also announced that over 40 employees and agents were involved in some suspicious activity regarding the transactions and reported these employees to Estonian authorities. The bank described the employees' actions as potentially fitting the bill of internal collusion. Okay, well, it looks to me like somebody got on the inside and, rot comes from inside, doesn't it? Bill Browder, the former hedge fund manager, has become one of the primary activists behind new sanctions against Russia, has long alleged that Danske Bank played a key role in helping launder proceeds from a tax scheme that Browder's former accountant, Sergei Magnitsky, uncovered. And of course, The reason we have the Magnitsky Act is because Magnitsky was murdered by Vlad. Well, we better get on to our break. And this article is a little bit more involved here, and you can check out those links at the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos. So do that. Well, we're going to go to our break, and when we come back, we will, of course, go through weather from around the world. And then we're going to finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, one that comes out singing. British writer Nick Hornby is no stranger when it comes to obsessed musical fanboys. Best known as the writer of the 2000 hit movie High Fidelity, which was based on his novel of the same name, Hornby is back some 18 years later with the story of Duncan. He's a pop studies academic and diehard fan of a fictitious American indie rock musician, Tucker Crowe, who released one album more than 20 years ago and then disappeared from the scene. Duncan's longtime live-in girlfriend, Annie, played superbly by Rose Byrne, doesn't share her partner's enthusiasm, which borders on the obsessive, and when she writes a scathing review online about some recently surfaced unreleased tracks from Crowe's fake famous Juliet Naked album, she is surprised when none other than Tucker Crowe himself contacts her and agrees with every word she says. From there, the two develop an online relationship, and when Tucker subsequently announces that he's planning a trip to London to visit one of his children, she agrees to meet him. Juliet Naked walks the fine line between drama and comedy and delivers some real laughs, as well as some sobering reminders that most rock stars don't end up living the dream. Ethan Hawke wisely takes an understated approach to playing Tucker, and it pays off. Some of the best scenes are those with the numerous offspring he's accumulated from various exes. Tucker is flawed. Actually, he's a bit of a hopeless case, but there's just something about him that keeps the audience rooting for him. Add to that Hawke's chemistry with Byrne, and Juliet Naked is one of those films that both women and men will enjoy. It's a sweet, witty ballad about relationships, starting over and staying optimistic. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. One idea from natural rights philosophy that gained traction in the American colonies was popular sovereignty. Popular sovereignty means that the people are the ultimate source of the authority of their government. According to natural rights philosophy, people leave the state of nature and either agree to a social contract to form a government or join a society that already exists. In either case, the people must consent to live under a government's authority. The people can withdraw their consent if the government violates their fundamental rights. This is called the right to revolution. Popular sovereignty is expressed in both the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. The Declaration says that, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. The Constitution states that, we the people of the United States do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
You can help stop the Trump agenda in its tracks. Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. And on November 6th, vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Negotiations were underway on Thursday between Christine Blasey Ford's attorneys and lawmakers on the Senate Judiciary Committee, but ended with no decision on when or if Ford will testify about allegations that Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh sexually assaulted her.
Professor Ford really doesn't want to be questioned by outside counsel, and she would like senators to question her instead. She doesn't want it to turn into some kind of a trial where she's being questioned by an attorney like that, and that she does not want to testify in the same room as Judge Kavanaugh. She doesn't want to be in the same room with him at the same time. She wants the committee to subpoena Mark Judge and these other alleged witnesses.
Ford's lawyers requested a Thursday hearing in which Kavanaugh appears first. They said Ford is opposed to being questioned by outside counsel and mentioned having just one camera in the hearing room. Grassley is now set to consult with his staff and Republicans on the committee to determine his next steps. Ford's attorney, Deborah Katz, canceled 2 media appearances on Thursday night, which Republicans took as a positive sign. Trump, campaigning in Las Vegas Thursday night, praised his nominee as a fine person and a great gentleman.
Brett Kavanaugh is one of the finest human beings you will ever have the privilege of knowing or meeting. So we got to let it play out, but I want to tell you, he is a fine person.
In an interview with Sean Hannity before the rally began, Trump said that they needed to get on with the process.
But what do you make of where the Kavanaugh hearings are now? There's a new set of demands that have come out.
I think it's a very sad situation. He's an outstanding person. And frankly, Sean, to see what's going on is just very, very sad. You say, why didn't somebody call the FBI 36 years ago? I mean, you could also say, when did this all happen? What's going on? To take a man like this and besmirch. Now, with that being said, let her have her say, and let's see how it all works out. But I don't think you can delay it any longer. They've delayed it a week already. And
you've been very accommodating.
I have been accommodating. I say, let her say what she has to say, and let's see how it all comes out. But they've delayed it a week, and they have to get on with it.
A new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll released Thursday finds more Americans now oppose Kavanaugh's appointment to the Supreme Court than support it.
A brand new NBC Wall Street Journal poll, this just out a couple hours ago, really our first readout on how the public is absorbing the accusation as it has emerged. So here it is. New poll, 34% now say they support the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh, 38% oppose. He's underwater, he's upside down, plurality opposition. Now, there's a couple different ways to look at this. First of all, the question is, what's the trajectory here? We have been polling this, for a while now, before the accusation even emerged. So compare it to our last poll. This is last month, before anybody had heard anything about all of the accusation here. You see, look, the uptick is 9 points in opposition, from 29 last month to 38 now. Support is basically stable, 33, 34. So that's a concerning sign, obviously, if you're supporting Kavanaugh, if you're trying to get him through here. On the positive side, I guess, if you want to put it that way, for a Kavanaugh supporter, still a lot who are undecided here. It is plurality opposition, but it's 38%. You got to look at this maybe from the perspective of a senator, say, like a Susan Collins from Maine. If she was inclined to vote yes, and she's looking at the poll, this is not a pretty poll to look at, but you're not looking at overwhelming opposition. Is that maybe what it would take to dislodge her from that standpoint here? Put this in historical context, yes. What you're looking at here is this is now the most polarizing nomination we have seen sort of in the post-Bork era.
Thanks to a new federal law, consumers who want to protect personal financial information can freeze their credit files for free beginning today. Credit rating agencies in the past have charged consumers very unpopular fees. ABC News is reporting that Trump's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen, has participated over the last month in multiple interview sessions lasting for hours with investigators from Robert Mueller's office. George Stephanopoulos has more.
Multiple sessions with Mueller's team, multiple hours in multiple sessions, covering all aspects of President Trump's relationship with Russia. What does that mean? That means the whole probe into possible collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians and their interference in their election in 2016. It means looking into President Trump's financial and business affairs with Russia. And remember, Michael Cohen was part of that effort to look into the possibility of building a Trump Tower in Moscow. We've also learned that he's been questioned about whether President Trump or any of his allies ever discussed a pardon with Michael Cohen. Of course, that gets into the obstruction of justice aspect of the investigation as well. So this is big news. President Trump's former attorney, who's already been convicted, pled guilty to campaign finance violations, which also could implicate President Trump in a federal felony, has now been actively cooperating with Mueller's team. Multiple hours of discussion.
And that's a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
I'm Mark Belanger. After World War II, much of the UK was in a ruined state and needed lots of people to help it recover. It invited thousands of people to come to Britain as workers in the reconstruction. Many of those workers were people of color from countries in the Caribbean or other parts of the Commonwealth. Now, those workers are being told that they must return to their country of origin. It's being called the Windrush Scandal after one of the ships that brought the workers to the UK. I talked to Zita Holborn about the situation. Ms. Holborn is the national chair of an advocacy organization called Black Activists Rising Against Cuts, known by its acronym BARAC UK. I asked Ms. Holborn to describe what's become known as the Windrush Scandal.
So the Windrush Scandal, as it's been called, is about the injustice that's been experienced by people that came to the UK, predominantly from the Caribbean, during the 1950s and 1960s, people that were invited to the UK after World War II to help the post-war effort. They were directly recruited in some circumstances by public sector organisations, by the Department of Employment, to come and do jobs in the UK. We were told this was mother country. Some countries that were part of the British Empire. As far as they were concerned, they were British citizens. 40, 50 or 60 years later, they're now being told that they're in the country illegally. They're literally being snatched, detained and deported, and being deported in many cases en masse. So entire planes being chartered just for the purpose of deporting people.
Do you have an example of somebody who was affected by this scandal?
I have lots of examples. I have been supporting lots of different families and individuals at different stages. There are people who haven't ended up being deported, people that have been detained for long periods, and also people who have been deported and they're not allowed into the country for around 10 years, sometimes more than 10 years. And also people that have gone on a holiday back to their country of origin in the Caribbean. They may have gone to a family funeral or something like that. When they've tried to return to the UK, they've been refused entry into the country and effectively been exiled for 10 years. One case that is at the front of all our minds here in the UK right now is the case of Sarah O'Connor. Sarah wasn't deported, but she was threatened. She was one of those people that a year ago, having gone to school in the UK, and all her schooling in the UK, come as a small child, worked all her life, in her 50s, was suddenly told, you're here illegally, you don't belong here, you're not a British citizen. And she was threatened with deportation. She had to fight her case. She almost became destitute if it wasn't for the support of her family and her children, because she had no income. She was threatened with eviction by her landlords because she had no wages, and she couldn't work because they said she was here illegally, even though she'd been working her entire life. And even though she won her case and fought her case successfully, she very, very sadly passed away a few days ago. And the stress of this whole year fighting for justice took its toll on her.
How many people are we talking about?
We're talking about thousands of people. If you look at the families, and I think what's not widely known is at the moment there is a focus on people of that Windrush generation. In fact, a lot of the people that I'm supporting and working with and campaigning for are not from that Windrush generation. They are the children or the grandchildren. So they are people that have come to the UK because they had a primary carer or immediate family in the UK, a parent, a grandparent, an aunt or uncle. They came to the UK to join them and settle with that family member who was raising them. Some people came on an auntie's passport, a mother's passport, and didn't have a passport of their own and didn't realise that they weren't British citizens, that they needed to be naturalised.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We always like to begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 50 degrees Fahrenheit. We were initially slated for an overnight low in the mid to low 40s, but we actually had an overnight low of the upper 40 range. And it looks like we're going to have overnight lows for the foreseeable future in the low 50s. Day is going to be a bit warmer than yesterday. We're looking at, looks like mid 80s. So maybe a little bit warmer than the 85 that's slated. And then tomorrow we have a precipitous drop where we are expected to only have a high of 72 degrees. 86, 85, down to 72. And then it will bounce back up to about 72 on Sunday. And then Monday, we're looking at weather in the mid-80s again. What's up? Nights will remain in the low 50s during that duration, so good. Very small chance of precipitation tonight, none today. Winds right now are a negligible 1 mile per hour out of the northwest, though the forecast yesterday where the winds were to be light and variable through the night was actually wrong, because around 4 p.m. local time, the winds kicked up to their usual 5 to 10 miles per hour, which they usually do in the afternoon. And indeed, that is what is slated for this afternoon, when the winds will pick up and remain out of the northwest, by the way, but will be breezy at 5 to 10 miles per hour. We like that a lot. Ragweed pollen is high. The air quality index has gone up to 42, though still in the good range. It's weird about people's psychological determinants. We have had such terrible air for months. This wildfire smoke has been toxic. It's acidic. It hurts. And we had a couple of clear days, and now people feel like, oh, we could burn our trash. And so now the air quality is inching ever so up. Thank you. Thank you, people. Stop burning your trash. God, I hate that. All right. Well, pressure is steady at 30.31 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 70%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 60 degrees and sunny. Paris is 66 and sunny. Rome is 80 degrees and partly cloudy with a thunderstorm and electrical storm advisory, which could knock out, well, the electrical grid. So you are warned. Kiev is 79 and fair. Kabul is 69 degrees and fair, but with heavy wind. So this might be the time to have a wedding. Okay, the drone's a little bit harder to fly in the heavy wind. But be careful anyway, okay? Hong Kong is 79 and clear. Tokyo is 66 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 56 and clear. San Francisco, California is 57 degrees and sunny. And New York is 69 degrees and cloudy with a small craft advisory. So if you're out on the river or the bay, do take care. The winds are out of the north in gusts. So do take care. Small craft advisory. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by People's Personal Weather Stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. French 77 in hand. They're well chilled. Please do. As we continue here in the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, this article is by Lawrence Hurley out of Reuters. Aided by fellow Republicans in the Senate, Donald Trump is rapidly filling vacancies on U.S. appeals courts, moving some that had liberal majorities closer to conservative control in an ideological shift that could benefit his administration. Oh, you mean like pardon him for crimes committed? These 13 courts wield considerable power, usually providing the last word on rulings appealed from lower courts on disputes involving federal law. Their rulings can be challenged before the U.S. Supreme Court, but most such appeals are turned away because the top court typically hears fewer than 100 cases annually. 11 of the courts handle cases from specific multi-state regions. One handles cases from Washington, D.C., while another specializes in patent cases. Presidents can shape the federal judiciary with their appointments and seek to appoint judges they believe share their ideological leanings. Well, he doesn't have any of that. He is a sponge, and someone tells him, go this way. And he has a list of Federalist Society judges, and he'll just plot those right in. Republicans typically strive to pick conservatives, while Democrats generally aim to appoint liberals, all subject to Senate confirmation, which is run by the ruling party, and that happens to be, the Vichy GOP. Although there are no guarantees a judge will rule the way a president might like, the number of Republican and Democratic appointees is generally an indicator of an appeal court's conservative-liberal balance. With the Republican-led Senate rapidly considering and confirming many of his judicial nominees, Trump already has appointed 26 appeals court judges because, yes, the Republicans held so many of those seats open, hundreds even, throughout the whole court system. All right. Trump already appointed 26 appeals court judges. That is more than any other president in the first 2 years of a presidency. And Trump's Democratic predecessor appointed 55 in 8 years as president. Only 4 of the 13 federal appeals courts currently have more Republican-appointed judges than Democratic selections. And I guess that has to change, as per Federalist Society regs. The 2 appellate courts closest to shifting to Republican-appointed majorities are the Atlanta-based 11th and the Philadelphia-based 3rd. Trump already has made 3 appointments to the 11th, leaving it with a 6-6 split between Dems and Repugs. Oh, I'm sorry. Those descriptives are in this reporter's opinion. Indeed. The Third Circuit, to which Trump has made one appointment, now has a 7-5 Democratic appointee majority with 2 vacancies for Trump to fill. Should further vacancies open up on those courts, Trump's appointees would tip the ideological balance. Now, I know some people say ideological, but I like to say ideological. Flipping of a judicial circuit, where cases typically are decided by panels of 3 judges, can have direct impact on how cases are decided and new legal precedents established. Oh, you mean legal precedents ignored? Trump pledged as a candidate in 2016 to appoint conservatives to the bench. So far, he has kept his promises. Well, yeah, he had a whole list, and now he's going down the list. An 11th Circuit 3-judge panel on July 25th revived a civil rights lawsuit challenging the state of Alabama's move to prevent the city of Birmingham from increasing the minimum wage. Alabama has asked for a rehearing, which would be heard by the entire 12-judge 11th Circuit if the request is granted. And in the Third Circuit, the Trump administration has appealed a lower court decision blocking the Justice Department from cutting off grants to Philadelphia over so-called sanctuary city policies limiting local cooperation with federal authorities on immigration enforcement. Well, I would call that quartering. You know, when the troops are quartered in your domicile, the feds can't do that. Okay? When Obama took office in 2009 after George W. Bush's 8 years, the courts were tilted heavily toward Republican appointees, with only one having a majority of Democratic appointees. When Obama left office in 2017, after his own 2 4-year terms, 9 of the 13 regional courts had majority Democratic appointees. Well, flipping courts and have solid Democratic majorities will be difficult for Trump. The San Francisco-based 9th has 7 vacancies, and Trump has already filled one. Even if Trump fills all of them, Democratic appointees would still hold a 16-13 majority. And Trump allies criticized the 9th Circuit for high-profile rulings against his administration, including over the legality of the president's ban on people entering the U.S. from certain Muslim-majority countries. Well, we have to be that way. I mean, you have to make America great again, and the only way to do that, maybe appoint a few judges that, have a little bit of Teutonic with their gin.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Lindsay Gibbs brings us this last offering here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy's Chef's Table. In an unsurprising yet somehow still stunning decision, the World Anti-Doping Agency voted yesterday to lift their ban on Russia's anti-doping program, which was suspended in 2015. After missing just one Olympics, the 2018 Winter Games in South Korea, Russia's pseudo-exile from the international sporting community appears to be coming to a swift end well before the next Summer Olympics in 2020. Travis Tygart, the CEO of the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, released a no-holds-barred statement calling the decision bewildering and inexplicable and a devastating blow to the world's clean athletes. In the years since the RUSADA was first decertified, more information has been made public about the extent of the state-sponsored doping programs in Russia. Indeed, In fact, in 2016, a whistleblower exposed the way that he would swap dirty urine samples with clean ones in the middle of the night during the 2014 Sochi Olympics in what was called one of the most elaborate and successful doping ploys in sports history. And of course, the woman who exposed that, she got put in a gulag for a while. But that's okay. You don't run onto the pitch. You might get poisoned. Well, we're going to have to get out of here. We're at the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. And we'll be back, of course, on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. But you know that Netroots Radio will be broadcasting throughout the day and throughout the weekend for all that breaking news. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio for all that breaking news, and we will visit with you on Monday in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pas fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.